All right, guys, Mr. Antonucci here, and in this section 6E, we're going to talk about confidence intervals for a difference in population proportions. We're going to cover these three learning targets in each of these three videos. So this first one, we're going to talk about checking conditions for calculating a confidence interval about a difference between two proportions. And then in the next one, we're going to calculate that confidence interval. And then in the third one, we're going to construct and interpret a two sample Z interval for a difference in proportions. So in section 6B, we talked about how to construct and interpret a confidence interval for a population proportion P. Now we're going to talk about constructing one for a difference between two population proportions. So here we go. Here's the conditions. You got the random condition. Make sure your data come from two independent random samples or from two groups in a randomized experiment. So oftentimes we're looking for some kind of change, some kind of difference between one group and another one. We could do that with samples or we could do that with experiments, but they have to be random. The 10% condition, if you're sampling without replacement, each sample has to be less than 10% of the population size from which you're sampling. Now, if you're doing two groups in a randomized experiment, then you don't need to check the 10% condition because it doesn't apply there. And then the large counts, you want to make sure that the number of successes and failures from each sample or group are at least 10. And notice again, here we're using p hat, the sample proportion from sample 1 and 2, because we don't know the population proportion in this case, so we can't use the population proportion. So here we go. With in-home viewing options available, do people see movies in a movie theater less often now than in the past? So Gallup polled 800 randomly selected U.S. adults in 2001 and found that 66% had seen at least one movie in a movie theater during the previous year. 2021, Gallup surveyed 811 U.S. adults and found that only 39% had done so. So we're going to let P sub 2021 be that proportion from 2021, and P sub 2001 be the proportion from 2001. Right here, what we have is the definition of the parameters for this situation. So when we get to doing the full confidence interval, when you have to define your parameters, you want to define them like this in full context using the notation here. We'll get to that later, though. In this video, we just want to check the conditions for calculating a confidence interval for the difference in proportions here. So first thing we got to do is check the random condition. So again, like I've stressed many times, you can't just write the word random and put a check next to it. You have to say specifically how the random condition is satisfied. So here you'd write a sentence. Gallup selected independent random samples of U.S. adults in 2001 and 2021. Now, again, next thing we got to do is 10% condition. And here, the 10% condition does apply because we are doing samples. We're not assigning treatment to groups. Okay? So we have to verify the 10% condition. And again, you can't just write 10% condition down and put a check mark. You have to verify it. So you should have some kind of inequality statement indicating that 800 is less than 10% of whatever it is for the first sample, and then 811 is less than 10% of whatever it is for the second sample. In this case, it's all U.S. adults in 2001 and all U.S. adults in 2021. And then, of course, the last condition that we want to check is the large counts condition. And again, you can't just put large counts in a check mark. You have to show that it's actually satisfied. Okay, so here we go. Large count condition, you have to show that the number of successes and failures in each sample is at least 10. So 800 times 0.66, 528, and 800 times 1 minus 0.66, 272. Those are the number of successes and failures for the 2001 poll. And then we did the same thing for the 2011 poll using those corresponding sample proportions, and those are at least 10. So there you have it. That's all you needed to do to check the conditions um, for this situation. All right, guys, hope that was helpful. Take care.